We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Gimel Amid Aleph and Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 43a. This Daf is sponsored by Shalom ben Noim in memory of Moshe Leo ben David. Thank you for your sponsorship. If you would like to sponsor an Amid or a Daf, see the description box below, and see the description box below to see how you can support this channel. On the previous Amid, the Gemara understood from a Braisa that with regards to Tcheles Ein La Bedika, there's no way to test it. That means that there's no way to test whether it's real Tcheles or whether it's made from Kala Ilan, from indigo. And the Gemara asked on the previous Amid, is that really the case? Is there really no test? And the Gemara brought from Rav Yitzchak Bereider Rav Yehuda, who did test the tcheles. He tested it with alum clay and water of fenugreek and urine ben arboim yom, urine that's 40 days old. Vitari la begavayu, when he soaked the tcheles in there, me'ursa v'yad l'tzafra, from night until morning. Ifrad chazuse, if the color faded, so then psula, then it was disqualified. It was known that it was not real tcheles. Lo ifrad chazuse, but if the color did not fade, then kshera, then he said that it was kosher. And so you see that there is a way to test the tcheles to make sure that it's authentic. And Rashi explains, Ben Arboim Yom, that's a urine that's 40 days old. Rashi has two explanations. It could be Mitinok Ben Arboim. It means that the urine comes from a child who is 40 days old. Rashi says, Lishna Achrin, another explanation, Sha'avru Mem Yom, Mishayatsu Migufa Adam. It's been 40 days since the urine left the body of the person. V'nifred Chazusa, again, if the color faded, Niskalkel Hamar, if the color faded, Psula, then it is disqualified to Kala Ilanhu, because then we know it comes from indigo. And the Gemara continues with another example of how to test the tcheles. V'Ravada Kame de Rava Mishmei de Rav Avira Amar, and Ravada, before Rava, he said in the name of Rav Avira the following: Maisi Chamira Arkasa Desari, one brings hard leavened barley. Arkasa means it's hardened, Chamira is leavened, and Sari refers again to the barley. He brings hard leavened barley. V'Afia La Begave, and then he bakes the tcheles in there. Ishtanoi Lemal Yusa, now if the color changes for better, it becomes a clearer, a better color, then kashera, then it is kosher. Legreyusa Psula, but if the color changes for the worse, so then it's puzzle, then it's disqualified. V'simonich, and the mnemonic to remember this: Shinoi Sheker, a change can be false. Shinoi Emes, a change can show truth. And so therefore, again, this is another kind of test that can be used. And Rashi explains, Chamira Arkasa means, as we said, Seor Kasha. Again, we're talking about where it was leavened and it's hard. And Rashi continues, V'simonich, and the mnemonic to remember, Eza Shinoi Kosher, Ve'eza Shinoi Pasul, what kind of change is kosher and what kind of change is pasul is disqualified. Shinoi Sheker, Hameshana Devaru Lara. Shinoi Sheker means somebody changes falsely, he changes his words towards bad, towards evil. Then Hakol Yodin Sherau, everyone knows it's bad. The same idea over here. If the color gets worse, then we know it's not the real tcheles. Shinoi Emes, and what's Shinoi Emes? A change of truth. That's Hameshana Devaru Lahosef Alavu Lakaimo. Somebody changes his words, he wants to add on to it, he wants to maintain that. So then Hakol Yodin Shatovu, then everyone knows that it's good. And again, the same idea, if it is a change for the better, then we know that it is the true tcheles. And so the Gemara continues and says, Mai Ein La Bedika Nami Dekamar. So what does Ein La Bedika actually mean in the Braisa? Again, the initial understanding is there's no way to test whether it comes from Kala Ilan, whether it's indigo. But now the Gemara says there's another explanation of that line in the Braisa, Ati'ima, that's actually going on the Ti'ima. And Rashi explains, Mai Ein La Bedika Dekamar Nami Ati'ima. It means Ein Adam Yachol Livdo Katsemer. A person will not be able to inspect the wool. Im L'Shem Tcheles Nitzba. Was the wool dyed for the sake of the mitzvah of tcheles? Im l'ti'ima, or is it l'ti'ima, which means, as we said on the previous Amid, l'shem nisayin, it was just to test it, to make sure that the dye was effective. V'yamr leil, we said earlier, the ti'ima psula, that ti'ima is puzzle, and so therefore essentially there's no way to test whether it was done lishma or not. And Rashi continues with another explanation, Lishna Achrina, another explanation, At Te'ima, we're going on Te'ima, V'hachi Kamar, means to say as follows, Ein Bodkin Yorish al Techeles, we can't check a pot of Techeles that's being used to dye Techeles, B'Te'ima, you can't check it, B'Te'ima, with that which was already used for testing, Shalo Yipasal Kal Ayora, because otherwise it's going to make the whole batch puzzle that was mentioned on the previous Amud, Elashakal B'Veyasa, that's why he has to take a small amount in an eggshell and test with that, and be sure not to mix it with the rest that will be used for the actual dyeing of the tcheles, as was explained earlier on the previous Amud. And the Gemara continues, Mar mi Moshki, Mar, who came from a place called Moshki, I see Techelta, he brought Techeles b'shnei Rav Achai, during the years of Rav Achai. But Kua b'd Rav Yitzchak Bereider Rav Yehuda, they tested it with the test mentioned above of Rav Yitzchak Bereider Rav Yehuda, the Ifrad Chazuse, and the color faded, that indicated that it was not the real Techeles. And then they tested it again, but the Ravada, they tested it again with Ravada's test, b'shtanoi lemal yusa, and the color changed for the better, that indicated that it was real Techeles, so they had a contradiction within the tests. And so Savar Lemifsala, so he thought that he should disqualify it. It's not the real Tcheles. Amar Lehu Rav Achoy said to them, Elohol lo Tcheltehi v'lo kol Ilanhi, but it's a contradiction. You're going to say it's not Tcheles and it's also not indigo. That does not make sense. It can't be that there was a contradiction in the tests. Ella rather, Shmami, no, we see from this that Shmuasa Adadi Itmar, that both of these teachings, both of these tests were stated together, and you actually can use a combination of them to make the determination. If the test was done using the test of Rav Yitzchak B'rei Rav Yehuda, so lo ifrid chazuse, if the color does not fade, ksheira, then you know it's kosher. No further testing is needed. Ifrid chazuse, but if the color fades, so then you can do another test. But kinan la b'deravada b'chamira arkasa, then you can test it with the Ravada's test. You can use again the hardened, leavened barley, and ishtani lemal Yusuf, it changes for the better ksheira, then you know it's kosher. Legrei Yusuf, it changes for the worse, then psula, then one knows that it is possible. And the Gemara continues, Shalchu mitam, they sent from there, they sent from Eretz Yisrael the following message, Shmuasa hadadi itmar. In fact, these two teachings were stated together, and so therefore, again, both tests can be used in combination as described above. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Moni dayik v'zovin kechumrei masnis. Rabbi Moni, he was exacting and he purchased in accordance with the stringency of the Braisa on the previous Amud. Rashi explains, dayik v'zovin min hamumcha, meaning he was exacting to always buy from an expert. Kechumrei masnaisa, following the stringency in the Braisa, the Le'el earlier, to Katani, it said in the Braisa on the previous Amud, Ti'im apsula, that testing is possible, hilkach boy mumcha, and therefore one requires an expert. Again, that was said on the previous Amud and explained, and he did this, and the Gemara continues, Amrle Husab, a certain elder said to him, Hachi avad kamoy de kamoch, this is what the ones who preceded you, they did the same thing, they were also strict, va'atzlach eskayu, and their business was successful, and therefore what you are doing is proper. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught in a Braisa, Halokeach talis mitzuyetzets min hashuk, if somebody buys a talis that has tzitzis from the marketplace, mi Yisrael, if he buys it from a Yisrael, if he buys it from a Jew, harehi bechezkasa, then there's a presumption that it is kosher. Min ha'ovid kochavim, if he buys it from the idolater, from the non-Jew, so then it depends. Min ha'tagar, if it's from a professional merchant, then kashera, then we assume it is kosher. Min ha'hedyot, if it's from a regular person, not a professional merchant, then psula, then we assume it's possible, it is disqualified. And the Braisa continues, V'afal bishamru, even though they say ein adam rashoy limkor talis mitzuyetzes lovet kochavim, that a Jewish person is not allowed to sell a talis with tzitzis to a non-Jew, and so therefore one might say this is obviously not kosher. Why should we even trust it from a tagar? Because how did the tagar get a kosher talis? It wouldn't be possible. One's not supposed to sell the talis mitzuyetzes, but still we assume that it was sold nonetheless to the tagar, and we assume that it is kosher. Ad sheyater tzitzioseh, again they say that a person shouldn't sell a talis that has tzitzis to the Oved Kochavim unless you until you untie the tzitzis. And so again, nevertheless, even though that is true, that a person is not supposed to sell a talis mitzuyetzes to the Oved Kochavim, still it's kosher if it's bought from a tagar. And the Gemara continues, my time, and now what's the reason for this? Why is it that a person is not supposed to sell a talis mitzuyetzes to an Oved Kochavim until he unties the tzitzis? So hacha targimu, here they interpret it, here they explain as follows, mishum zona, it's because of a prostitute. The idea is that let's say this non-Jewish person visits a prostitute and he's wearing a talis mitzuyetzes, people will assume that he's Jewish, so that's the reason for the prohibition. And Rav Yehuda says a different reason, Shemi Yislava imo baderech, maybe somebody's going to accompany him on the road thinking that he's Jewish, v'hargenu, then he'll end up killing him, it's an issue of danger, and so those are the reasons that are given. And Rashi explains, Mina ovet kochavim, from the idolater, im tagar, who if he's a merchant, ksher, then it's kosher. Delomar anafshi, he doesn't want to ruin his reputation. V'zavin lam Yisrael, so he makes sure to buy it from Yisrael, ksher, and it's kosher. But psula, but if he's not a professional, so then it's possible to shema hutzava, maybe it was the non-Jew who died it, v'shalo lishma nasis, then it was done not for the sake of the mitzvah, that would be problematic. Even though one really shouldn't sell to a non-Jew a talis mitzuyetzes, therefore why should we ever assume it might be kosher? But nevertheless we say maybe it was sold by a Jew to the tagar, to the merchant. My time, and what's the reason ein mochen mitzuyetzes leovet kochavim? Why is one not allowed to sell a talis mitzuyetzes to an Oved Kochavim? First explanation was mishum zona, because of a prostitute. Rashi gives two explanations. Dilma havale zona Yisraelis. Maybe there's a zona who's Jewish, who's svura Yisrael, who v'tiboyle, and she will think that he's a Yisrael because of the tzitzis, and therefore she'll have relations with him. V'yavar mishum lo teschaten bum. That would be a violation of lo teschaten bum, which is a pasuk in the Torah. Lishna achrin, another explanation of mishum zona. Mishum zona ovedes kochavim. We're talking here about a zona who's not Jewish. Dilma Maybe what will happen is that the Ovid Kochavim is going to give her this talis mitzuyetzes as her payment. V'yamra ki Yisrael nasna li, and so then she's going to say it was Yisrael who gave it to me. V'yasi l'michshadei, and so then there's going to be a suspicion again that this individual was Jewish, and that would be problematic. And Rashi continues, Shema Yislu Yisrael im ha'ovid kochavim zeh. Maybe the Yisrael will join this Ovid Kochavim, v'savar Yisrael, who he's going to think that he's Jewish, dahayesh lo tzitzis, because he has tzitzis, v'yargenu, and then he'll end up killing him, and that is the reason for the prohibition. And the Gemara continues, Rav Yehuda Rami Techelta lefarzuma deinshe beise. Rav Yehuda, he would put techelas, he put tzitzis on the garments of the individuals in his household, meaning even his wife's garment had tzitzis. And the Gemara continues further, umevarich kol tzafra lehisatif batzitzis. Also, Rav Yehuda, every morning when he would put on his tzitzis, he would make the bracha of lehisatif batzitzis, wrapping oneself in tzitzis. And the Gemara sees this as a contradiction as follows: miderami, from the fact that he put tzitzis on his wife's garment, so kasavar, that shows that he holds mitzvah saseh shelo hazman gramahi, that when it comes to the mitzvah of tzitzis is a positive commandment that is not time bound. It's not only during the day, but it's at night as well. And therefore, since it's a positive commandment that is not time bound, it applies to women as well. But if it's not time bound, so amay mevarich kol tzafra v'tzafra, why was he making a bracha every morning? That doesn't really make sense to just make it in the morning. If this is a bracha continuously all the time, or if this is a mitzvah continuously rather all the time, there's nothing unique about the morning. And the Gemara answers to that, Rebbe, the reason he made the bracha every morning was because he holds like Rebbe. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, tefillin, with regards to tefillin, calls man shemanichan, every single time they're put on, mevarich alei, and a bracha is made over them, divrei Rebbe, these are the words of Rebbe, and that's really all we meant to say, that when he put on his tzitzis in the morning, every time he put them on, he would really make a bracha. Happens to be, he put them on in the morning, and that's what it means. But the Gemara asks, if so, kol shaita nami, then every time, why does it say morning? It should just say every time he put on tzitzis, he made a bracha. And the Gemara says to that, Rav Yehuda inish tzaniya have, Rav Yehuda, he was a modest person, velo shari le leglime kula yoma, he never took off his cloak the entire day, and so therefore he really only put it on in the morning. Umayshna mitzafran, why specifically the morning? Because we were talking kimashani miksus laila lichsus yom, we're talking about when he changes from his night garment to his day garment, that is when he would make the bracha. And Rashi explains, Rav Yehuda Rami le tchelta leforzima deinshe beisa means hayamatel tzitzis lebeged shemiskasa bo ishto. It means that he put tzitzis on the garment which his wife was wearing. Umevarich kol tzafri, made a bracha every morning. V'od osa davar zeh. And furthermore, he did the following: kishemisate betaliso bechol boker v'boker. When he put on his talis every morning, hayamavarich, he made a bracha. Midrami tchelta l'ksos ishto. So the Gemara says, from the fact that he put tchelas on his wife's garment, kasavar nashim chayavos. But that shows that nashim are chayavos. They're obligated in tzitzis. Alma kosavar mitzvah saseh shelo azman gramahi. You see that he holds it's a positive commandment that's not time bound. There's mana bein b'yom uvein b'layla. The time applies both during the day and the night is the time of the mitzvah. These man grama nashim peturos. If it was man grama, then women would be pater. And so imkain delilah's mana my mevarch. But if that's true, why was he making this bracha lepam rishon? Kishenesatif, he should just make the bracha the first time he puts it on. Kishahaisa chadasha. The Gemara initially thinks that just when it was a new garment, the first time he ever puts it on, havale levarich, he should make a bracha hamikan va'ilach yom aricha, and then from there on, it's just like an extended long day dummy. It's just all a continuation. Tohain laila mafsiko, the night does not interrupt. So the Gemara initially thinks he should make the bracha once the entire time of wearing the garment. The Gemara then said no, he holds like Rebbe, just like Rebbe, every time tefillin were put on, the bracha would be made. So too over here. And then the Gemara said, "V'lo have shari lo kol yoma ela b'layla." He only took off the garment at night. V'hilgach lo mevarech ela b'tzafra, and that's why he only made the bracha in the morning. Again, uliolam karebi, and that's why he really was following Rebbe. Every time he puts it on, he makes a bracha, but he just put it on in the morning. U'ma'ishna mitzafra, and why in the morning? Livrach kishu omeid u'mesatif ba bashmores kodem hayom lagirse. Really, he might put it on. He'll wrap himself even before the daytime because he starts to learn. U'meshani, the Gemara then answered, Kim meshani miksos laila liksos yom. It just means when he changed from his night garment to his day garment, shnei talisos mitzuyatzos hayu, he actually had two talisos with tzitzis. Achas liyom, v'achas lalayla, one was for the day, one was for the night, and it just means when he changed to the daytime one, he would make a bracha. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught in a Braisa, Hakol chayovin betzitzis, all are chayiv, are obligated in the mitzvah of tzitzis. Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim, Kohanim, Levim, and Yisraelim, Gerim, converts, Noshim, women, Va'avodim, and slaves. Rabbi Shimon Poter, Benoshim, Rabbi Shimon says women are exempt, Mivnei shem mitzvah saseh shazman gramahu, because it is a mitzvah saseh shazman grama, a positive commandment that is time bound. V'chol mitzvah saseh shazman grama, and all mitzvah saseh shazman grama, Noshim Peturos, women are poter, they are exempt. And the Gemara says, Amar Mar, the master said, quoting from the Brisa above, Hakol chayovin b'tzitzis, all are chayav in tzitzis, Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim. And the Gemara asks on this Pshita, isn't it obvious? Of course. Di'i Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, Petiri, if Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim were exempt from tzitzis, so man l'chayiv, so who exactly is obligated in the mitzvah of tzitzis? And the Gemara continues and answers, Kohanim, itzricholei, the Brisa needs to teach you Kohanim. Because Sal Gadai Techamina, one might have thought, Hoa Luchsiv, since it's written in the Pasuk, Lo Silbash Shadnes Tzemeru Pishtim Yachtov Gedilim Tasa Loch, it says the mitzvah or the prohibition of wearing shatn is next to the mitzvah of tzitzis, so one might have thought, Mandalo Ishtri Kilaim Lagabe Bilavisha Hu de Mechaya Betzitzis, only an individual where Kilaim is not permitted to wear for that individual, that kind of individual is obligated in tzitzis. And so therefore, Hani Kohanim, therefore with regards to Kohanim, Hoel Ve'ishtri Kilaim Lagabayu, since Kilaim is permitted for them, that's with regards to the big day kahuna, the garments of kahuna, so therefore Lo L'chayv, one might have thought that the Kohanim are not obligated in the mitzvah of tzitzis. And so Kamash Malon, so that's what the Brisa is teaching. Nihi de Ishtari Be'idan Avoda, granted during the Avoda, Kilayim Shatnez is permitted for Kohanim, but below Idan Avoda Lo Ishtari, but if it's not the time of the Avoda, of the service in the Beis HaMikdash, so Shatnez is not permitted for Kohanim, and therefore Kohanim are also included in the obligation of tzitzis. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Shimon Poter Benoshim. The Brisa then said that Rabbi Shimon says women are exempt because Rabbi Shimon considers it to be a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. And the Gemara says, my time with Rabbi Shimon, what's the reason of Rabbi Shimon? Why is it a mitzvah saseh shazman grama? Titania, as we learned in the following Brisa, Uri'isam oso, it says in the Pasuk by Tzitzis that you're going to see it. So Prat l'chsus laila, that excludes a garment at night, and therefore that makes it, again, a mitzvah saseh shazman grama, because there's no mitzvah of tzitzis at night, it's only during the daytime. And the Brisa continues, Ato Omer Prat l'chsus laila, you're saying that it excludes ksos laila, a garment of the night. Oeno ela prat l'chsus suma, maybe it really is supposed to be excluding a garment of a blind person. You have to be able to see it. The blind person can't see, and therefore maybe his garment is excluded. And the Brisa continues, Kishu Omer asher techasaba, when it says asher techasaba, which is a pasuk that represents an inclusion, hare ksos suma amor, so therefore we include the garment of the blind. Hamani mekayim urisa moso, so what do I do with the pasuk of urisa moso? Prat l'chsus laila, that comes to exclude a garment of the night. Umar isa l'ravos ksus sumo lahotzi ksus laila, and why do you see fit to include the garment of the blind and to exclude the garment of the night? Marban iksosuma, I include the garment of the blind, sheyeshna b'riyah etzel acherim, because at least that is seen by others. Umotzi aniksos laila, but I exclude the garment of the night, she'ena b'riyah etzel acherim, that no one can see. It's impossible to see at night because of the darkness. And the Gemara continues, v'Rabbanan, and what about according to the Rabbanan? And Rashi explains, shazman grama, again it's a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. The laila Rabbi Shimon lavs man tzitzis, because according to Rabbi Shimon, the nighttime is not the time for tzitzis. V'hava yom zmana, the daytime is the time for tzitzis. And Rashi continues, Kohanim ishtaroi kilayim legabayu, the Kohanim, kilayim is permitted for them, that's by the avnate, which is part of the big day kahuna. Techsib be sheishu tchelas, it's written over there, sheishu tchelas, again it's shatnez. And Rashi continues, Ksos suma, the garment of the blind, the chayiv, that it is obligated in tzitzis. And then the Gemara asks, V'Rabbanan dislu laila zman tzitzis, according to the Rabbanan, that the nighttime is the time of tzitzis. V'hav a mitzvah saseh shelo hazman gram, and it is a mitzvah saseh that is not time bound, v'noshim chayav, and Nashim Archayev, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Gimel Amid Beis.